So tonight, the theme that I'm talking about is loneliness, how to work with loneliness such that we actually gain in greater wisdom and it deepens our practice rather than reacting to it in an unskillful way, right? First, before I start talking about loneliness, I wanted to honor Thich Nhat Hanh and his passing. I notice a lot of people are giving talks on Thich Nhat Hanh and what he brought to the world, and um, you know, there are plenty of them out there if you want to hear them. He meant a lot to me in my practice. I read a lot of his books when I was a long time ago when I was first starting out. What I really value and took from Thich Nhat Hanh more than anyone else was the simplicity of his teachings, right? He doesn't overcomplicate anything. He brings it right down to bare bones, This is what it's like to be human. This is what you can try to do, what not to do. So he doesn't complicate it. And I've taken that to heart, and I like to think that that's the way I teach as well, as far as simplicity goes. So loneliness, yeah. I have felt a lot of loneliness in my life. So it's been a common theme for me to work with, particularly on long retreats. When I go on long retreats, um, I have felt a lot of loneliness. And along with loneliness, for me, comes restlessness and anxiety. Yeah, so they kind of work together as a team, really unpleasant team to work with. But however your loneliness shows up, we really can work with loneliness in a way that not only does it, we subdue the loneliness, but that loneliness uh, is the vehicle to deeper awareness, deeper compassion, and really profound connection with what it's like to be a human being. So, as you probably have heard and already know, whew, loneliness is at epidemic proportions right now, especially with the pandemic. It was before the pandemic. Like before the pandemic, 80% of young Americans stated that they have struggled with loneliness before. And imagine what it is now, with all of the isolating and quarantining and things that we're doing, that we've been asked to do. My biggest worry or fear, not that I spend any time worrying about this, is that this will become the norm for people. That quarantining from others and isolating ourselves from others will become a habit, right? That people will, how we can become really engrossed in our certain identities. I think we can get engrossed in habits as well. And the habit of avoiding others and isolating and ourselves can be a really detrimental habit for a few reasons. So loneliness obviously is an emotion that we are wired to feel along with all the other emotions. And according to emotional studies, loneliness is meant to be a warning sign that we need to connect with others. That it's time to engage with others, with your tribe. Our survival once upon a time depended on our ability to survive with others, with our tribe, with our group, our clan, whomever, our community. And we realize how interconnected we really are with the pandemic. A new variant starts somewhere in the world, the next thing you know, it's everywhere. We're so interconnected. But we originally were designed, just, this one neuroscientist said every part of our brain is programmed for us to be social beings. So our brain really is designed for us to be social beings. We need social connection. babies thrive through social connection. That's how they they grow and thrive, from the interactions and loving interactions they have from their parents and families. And that continues throughout life. In fact, the neuroscientists, I'm certainly not a neuroscientist, but I love to read these things with my minimal understanding of them, right? But the brain is more areas of the brain light up when we're having a connected conversation with another human being than at any other time, right? It's just like, and you know what it's like when we have a really deep or profound or even quiet sitting with someone, just a connection with another human being. So at some point, we need a certain amount of connection, right? In order to satisfy our wiring and to be whole. And this practice, the Buddha originally taught this practice as somewhat of a secluded. He said to take yourself secluded in the woods, sit at the root of a tree, cross your legs, sit down, and bring mindfulness before you, right? With mindfulness, paying attention to the breath, but then what did he have his monks and female and male monks do? They came back to the Sangha. They came back and they walked to the village together to do alms rounds with their bowls. They sat together and received teachings from the Buddha. They walked together from village to village. They went from one monastery to another to spend the 3-month rains retreats together in a large monastery. They actually, 3 months out of every year, they were together in a large building, one of the building halls, meditating together, eating and meditating together. So even though when we close our eyes and we meditate, nobody else is going to tell us, hey, you're really worrying right now. Or boy, aren't you caught up in obsessive thinking? We have to do that ourselves. So we're a bit isolated when we're doing our practice, but this is not an isolationist. Sangha is one of the most important parts of our practice. Community, connecting with others. So loneliness. There's a fruit at the end of this awareness when you bring mindfulness to loneliness, right? What we did today in our meditation, bringing your mindful awareness to the sensations in the body of loneliness, right? So the first step is to notice that there's loneliness there, right? Oh, wow, loneliness is really prevalent. That's the first step. What do we usually do when loneliness is present, right? We usually distract ourselves with unhelpful things. We might jump onto Netflix or to Facebook or to whatever, distract ourselves from our loneliness. But what I say is that no. Just like any other whatever else is present, bring awareness to loneliness, right? We can bring awareness to happiness. We can bring awareness to peacefulness. We can bring awareness to all the positive states. But we want to bring it also to the difficult ones like loneliness. Bringing that kind, compassionate, mindful awareness to the sensations in the body of loneliness. Saying some nurturing, kind things to ourselves is really important. Because typically what happens with most people, and I've worked with a lot of people individually as well as in groups, and what typically happens when people get lost in loneliness is they either distract or they get lost in loneliness. So those are the two unhealthy things to do, right? And when we get lost in loneliness, we usually have certain stories that we tell. Really unhelpful, untrue stories. like, oh, nobody likes me, or, well, why do I even bother? Or it's too hard to or whatever stories that we have that separate us, that keep us separate from others, right? Um, Perhaps we've moved to a new place, we need to meet people or meet a new group of people or friends. Um, Laziness, sloth, and torpor can be a hindrance that stops us from connecting with others. Right now, fear is a really big thing that stops us from connecting to others, right? Um, but we want to be aware of these stories. And we want to bring our mindfulness to these stories, not get lost in them, but bring mindfulness to these stories. Are they rational? Are they rational, logical stories? Do they make sense? Right? Once we bring mindfulness to the stories, we can see whether they make sense. For instance, right now with the pandemic, people have blown their fear out of the pandemic totally out of proportion, right? Yes, over 700,000 people have died. But does that mean they have to sit in the, you know, 12 walls of their house for the rest of their life without seeing another human being? Right? Probably not. But a lot of people are actually doing that. Um, I know it's easy to get lost in because when I listen to a lot of the science, I can get lost in it too. But I knew a lady who has autoimmune issues. She was going to have her family over for Christmas. Uh, but one of her brothers got COVID, right? So she followed the science. And what she did is she put tables and chairs out for everyone and put food out for her brother and then everyone else. And they all sat far apart from each other outside and enjoyed their wonderful celebration together outside. They were all wearing masks and nobody got COVID, even though he had COVID, right? She was following, and he, of course, stayed far away from everyone. She was following this protocol because she loves her family. She wanted to see her family. She wanted to honor them. But she also didn't want to get sick, right? And she was following the science. But we can easily get lost in these catastrophizing stories that separate us. So we want to look at our stories that separate us from, that help feed the loneliness, right? Um, the other thing we want to do is connect with what stops us from connecting with others, right? So there might be fear of people not liking us, or fear of being different or being judged. I don't know what it is. We have to learn to work with those energies, right? To work with the fear of being alone. Because when we bring our awareness to loneliness, there's usually fear there as well. Not always. And once we really sit with loneliness for a while, the fruit, the little gem, is wisdom, which is, oh, there's a lot of fear here for me to feel. So then we feel the fear. Then there's another gem, which is, oh, okay, I've dealt with this fear, processed it, and now there's, oh, I would really like to join a book club and connect to like-minded people because I love to read, or whatever it is that your heart's desire, right? That's been calling to you. Sometimes when we're lonely, it's a call for connection with others. Sometimes it's a call for deepening our relationships, our connection with the people we're in relationship with right now. Other times it's a call for creativity, right? there's a part of us that is yearning to start a new creative project or start writing that essay or journaling or right? There's some part of us that wants to be connected to. So I see loneliness as a calling to connect to ourselves, to see what it is that our heart's desire is saying. What is it that we need right now? Yeah. And once we deeply, with compassion, listen to whatever that energy is, then we can follow through with it and gain a greater wisdom and greater connection with ourselves and others. So I want to say that there is a distinction between being alone and being lonely. Because some of my most lonely times was when I was in relationship with others, right? So it's not about necessarily about being alone, but sometimes it is. So what works for you, right? I have found that I have a couple of friends that I connect with once a week. They're sitting outside, or depending on how where we are in this pandemic spectrum, whether we can go out to eat or sit outside together or just talk on Zoom or the phone, really satisfies my need for connection, for deep conversation, right? So loneliness too, it's dangerous. It's detrimental to our health. So we really want to take care of it. They have all kinds of research. Loneliness leads to higher rates of heart disease, mortality, increases blood pressure. It's a risk factor for all kinds of cardiovascular, Alzheimer's, depressive symptoms, anxiety, anger, lower self-esteem, all kinds of stuff. So don't ignore your loneliness, bring your attention to it. You know, I realized being here with my daughter, I'm here with my daughter and granddaughter and son-in-law, that I love to cook while I'm here. And why do I love to cook? Because I'm like, I cook for myself. It's okay. I try to be mindful. It's all right, kind of enjoy it. But I love to cook when I'm here because I know that the people I'm cooking for, I'm feeding them. I'm giving them these beautiful nutrients. It's sort of love language for me. So I'm just realizing how many things that I'm doing here, like taking out the trash or cleaning out their cat litter box or whatever I do for them, feels so much more profound here when I'm with them because I'm doing it for other people and with other people, right? Which I don't get when I go back home and I live alone again. So there's something to be said about connecting with others. It's very profound. Yeah, so we want to explore our patterns of loneliness, see when do we tend to get lonely, what are our triggers, right? For some people, it might be in the evening or first thing in the morning. We want to really get to know, like Thich Nhat Hanh says, take care of our loneliness. Part of taking care of our loneliness is understanding it, seeing what's leading to it, if anything. Most lonely people blame others for their loneliness, and they don't look within to see the root cause of their loneliness. But practitioners who are practicing self-awareness won't be pushing it away. We'll actually be turning towards it to the best of our ability, right? Yeah, and It's interesting is the MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction 8-week programs, they've done research and found that loneliness actually, mindfulness practice, daily mindfulness practice, reduce loneliness considerably for older adults living alone. So just meditating every day is one of the most powerful things you can do to reduce loneliness. Once again, looking at our habitual ruminations, our thoughts, our stories, our patterns about that cause or add to our loneliness, and choose to say, okay, I hear you, and I'm not gonna feed that thought stream. Sometimes we learn loneliness from our parents or family members. I know, or not, you may not have, but I know that my family was very secluded from others who, stayed just with our little group, and which could get really lonely at times. So we don't have to continue on with these patterns. A lot of people, I consider myself an introvert because I need time alone in order to refuel, and that's what they say is the definition of an introvert. I like people, love to be around people, but I get exhausted after a while. A lot of people use the fact that they're an introvert as an excuse to not want to connect to others. I'm just an introvert. Yeah. And I know it's challenging for introverts to be more outgoing, but that's, we can connect with others just as well, if not maybe more, because we're not seeking the attention as an introvert, you know. So look at these patterns, see if any of them is adding to any loneliness. Compassion, compassion, compassion. Mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness. Wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. I heard a 103-year-old woman, she was on a radio station, and they asked her, she said, I've lived a very happy life. And they asked her, what was her tip for all people to lead a happy life? She said, give more than you receive. Always do good where you can. So if you're very lonely and feeling really alone, do something nice for someone. Connect to them and do something really nice for someone. And that will automatically pick you out of loneliness, and you'll feel wholesome mental states after doing that. Here's Pema Chodron. She writes, usually we regard loneliness as an enemy. Heartache is not something we choose to invite in. It's restless and pregnant and hot with the desire to escape and find something or someone to keep us company. When we can rest in the middle through meditation practice, we begin to have a non-threatening relationship with loneliness, a relaxing and cooling loneliness that completely turns our usual fearful patterns upside down. Our true nature is interconnection and interbeing. We know that. When we hear it, we know that. It vibrates through my body in a sort of way. We are only a small part of a greater web. We're not alone. We're already interconnected and interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh used to say. So keep practicing, and the more you practice, the more you sense everyone. You sense our connection on a daily basis. And when you do that, you go to the grocery store, masked up, or even masked up. I went to here in Denver, grocery store, and the lady was being very kind to me. She was the cashier, extremely kind, asking me how I wanted things bagged, asking me if she could scan the thing to give me a discount. And I just said to her, "Boy, you are so kind. I really appreciate you being so kind." And she said, oh, thank you. Okay, that's great. She wasn't expecting that. And I said, well, I hope you're doing all right. She said, well, my father just died last week, so I've been really struggling. Um, but anyhow, I'm back to work now. Today's my first day back. And I said, well, I'm so sorry for your loss. That must be really hard. And she got kind of teary-eyed and she said, I really loved him. He was a special man. And I said, well, I'm sorry for your loss and how wonderful that you had him as a father. So here we are. She's bagging my groceries and we're having this beautiful connection, right? Why? I could have just said, oh, nice, nice lady, and gone off and continued on with all of my, things that I had to do that day. But no, because I know that we're interconnected and I feel it on a regular basis, I see, oh, here's a person in front of me and she's being really kind. Let me honor that. So this is how we, as spiritual practitioners, how we go through life to the best of our ability, opening to ourselves, opening to others. Not everybody's going to want to connect. And that's fine too. But the more we can connect, just these little things, the less lonely we're going to be. And we're going to make their lives less lonely. And hopefully, through this connection, profound connection, human beings will not only start to honor themselves, but honoring one another and the earth that we live on. Because I feel that our disconnection from ourselves is also being reflected in how we're treating this planet. But it starts right here with us. So thank you for your presence. Thank you for your listening. And so how have you worked with loneliness? Is it a strong energy that you had to deal with? Maybe not. But what works for you? What doesn't work for you? Any stories you'd like to tell around it as well? Let's open it up to the group.